She was beaten mercilessly by her stepmother for feeding an old crippled man on the street, crying on the floor, unaware that the helpless beggar she showed kindness to was a secret billionaire who owned a vast empire and was about to change her life forever. Amina collapsed onto the kitchen floor with a dull thud, the sound swallowed by the thin walls of the house. Her knees struck first, then her palms, and finally her cheeks slammed against the cold tiles. The pain exploded through her face, bright and blinding, but it was nothing compared to the fear tightening her chest. "Look at you," Miriam hissed above her, "lying there like you belong on the street with that cripple." Amina tried to push herself up, but a sharp kick landed against her ribs, forcing the air from her lungs. She gasped, a broken sound escaping her throat as tears blurred her vision. She tasted blood. "Did I give you permission?" Miriam shouted. "Did I?" The wooden ladle came down again, striking Amina's back, then her shoulder, then her arm as she raised it weakly to protect her head. Each blow landed with intention. This was not anger that had lost control. This was punishment, measured and deliberate. "Answer me!" Miriam screamed. I was just..." Amina sobbed. Another strike cut her off. "You fed him," Miriam said, her voice low now. "Dangerous. You fed that useless broken thing like he was human." Amina curled into herself, trembling. Her body remembered this position. Knees tucked in, arms tight, chin down. She had learned it years ago, after her father died and kindness vanished from the house with him. On the street earlier that afternoon, the old man had looked so small. He sat hunched beside the road, one leg twisted beneath him, his hands resting on a worn walking stick. People passed without slowing, stepping around him as if he were part of the pavement. Some laughed, some whispered. Most pretended he wasn't there at all. Amina had seen him many times before. She always noticed the same thing, his eyes. They didn't beg, they watched. She had hesitated, her fingers tightening around the small paper bag she carried. It held the last of her lunch, the last thing she would eat until night. Then she remembered the hunger she used to feel as a child. The night she went to bed with her stomach burning. The way her father used to sneak her bread when Miriam wasn't looking. So she knelt. When she offered the food, the old man looked at her as if she had done something impossible. "You shouldn't," he said quietly. "I want to," Amina replied. His hands shook as he took it. "Kindness," he said, studying her face, "is never forgotten." She didn't know why the words stayed with her. Now, back on the kitchen floor, Miriam grabbed Amina's hair and yanked her head up. "You think we're rich?" Miriam snarled. "You think food is free?" "I'm sorry," Amina cried. "I was hungry too, I just..." Miriam slapped her hard across the face. "You are nothing without me," Miriam said. "Nothing. You eat because I allow it. You sleep here because I allow it. And you give what belongs to me to a cripple on the street?" She shoved Amina's head back down, forcing her cheek against the tiles. "Stay there," Miriam ordered. "That's where you belong." The ladle clattered to the floor, cracked down the middle. Miriam kicked it aside in disgust, then straightened her dress as if nothing had happened. "If you ever embarrass me like that again," she said coldly, "I'll throw you out myself. Let's see who feeds you then." Her footsteps moved away. A door slammed. Silence followed. Amina lay still, her body shaking, her tears soaking into the floor. She didn't dare move until the house settled, until she was sure Miriam was gone. Slowly, painfully, she rolled onto her side. Her reflection stared back at her from the dark oven door, swollen eye, bruised cheek, blood at the corner of her mouth. She barely recognized the girl looking back. Far away, in a black vehicle moving smoothly through the city, the old crippled man sat upright. The limp was gone. The weakness was gone. His back was straight. His eyes were sharp. A man beside him spoke quietly. "We confirmed her identity." The old man nodded once. "She was punished," the man continued. "Severely." Silence filled the car. Then the old man spoke, his voice calm, controlled, and final. "For feeding me," he said. "Yes." The old man looked out the window as the city lights reflected in the glass. "Then this begins," he said. And Amina, curled alone on a kitchen floor, had no idea that the single act she was beaten for had just awakened a power large enough to crush everything her stepmother thought she controlled. Morning came without mercy. Amina woke before dawn, not because she wanted to, but because pain refused to let her sleep any longer. Every breath scraped her ribs. Her back burned where the ladle had landed again and again. She lay still on the thin mattress, staring at the ceiling, listening to the house breathe around her. Miriam was already awake. Amina could hear her moving about, humming softly, the sound twisted with false normalcy. It was always like this after a beating. Miriam became lighter, calmer, as if releasing her anger onto someone else restored her balance. Amina sat up slowly, biting her lip to keep from crying out. She changed clothes carefully, choosing long sleeves despite the heat. She had learned how to hide damage. Bruises were explanations waiting to be demanded. In the kitchen, Miriam sipped tea and scrolled through her phone. "You're late," she said without looking up. "I didn't sleep well," Amina replied quietly. Miriam laughed. "You sleep too much already. Lazy girls don't deserve rest." Amina lowered her eyes. Silence was survival. When she stepped outside, the air felt different, heavier, as if the street itself remembered what had happened the day before. She walked the familiar road, her feet aching with each step. Neighbors passed her, some nodding, some staring a second too long. One woman glanced at Amina's face, then quickly looked away. They had heard something. She could feel it. At the bus stop, the bench stood empty. Amina stopped walking. Her chest tightened as she scanned the sidewalk, the curb, the shade beneath the tree. The old man was always there by this hour, always sitting quietly, watching the world ignore him. But today, there was nothing. No walking stick, no twisted leg stretched out in front of him, no sharp eyes observing silently. A strange fear crept in, cold and sharp. What if they chased him away? What if he fell? What if? She sat down heavily on the bench, ignoring the pain in her ribs. The memory of his voice returned uninvited. Kindness is never forgotten. She wondered if that was true. Across the city, inside a private medical suite hidden behind glass and steel, the old man lay on a bed that cost more than Miriam's house. Doctors moved efficiently around him, checking monitors, adjusting equipment. "You pushed yourself too far," one of them said. The old man smiled faintly. "I needed to know." "Know what?" "What people do when they think no one important is watching." When they left, he sat up fully, swinging his once useless leg over the side of the bed. There was stiffness, but no weakness. He stood. A man in a dark suit entered the room and bowed his head slightly. "Her name is Amina." "Where does she live?" the old man asked. The man hesitated. "With her stepmother." The old man's expression darkened. "And the injuries?" "Confirmed." Silence followed, thick and heavy. "Good," the old man said finally. "Then we proceed carefully." Back at the bus stop, a group of schoolboys laughed loudly as they passed. One of them nudged the other and glanced at Amina. "Careful," he muttered. "She's the one who feeds beggars." They laughed again and walked off. Amina's hands clenched into fists. Even here, even this, when she arrived at work later that morning, her supervisor eyed her carefully. "You okay?" he asked. Amina nodded. "Yes." He didn't look convinced, but he didn't press. People rarely did. It was easier not to know. That afternoon, Miriam stood in the doorway when Amina returned home. "Where were you?" Miriam demanded. "At work." Miriam stepped closer, her eyes sharp. "People are talking." Amina froze. "Talking about what?" she asked softly. Miriam smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "About how you like giving things away. About how you think you're some kind of savior." Amina said nothing. Miriam leaned in close, her voice a whisper. "I should have beaten that out of you years ago." That night, as Amina lay awake, staring into darkness, a black car slowed near the bus stop. The old man sat inside, watching the empty bench through tinted glass. "She came back," he said quietly. "Yes," the man beside him replied. "She looked for you." The old man closed his eyes. "No one looked for me when I was truly broken," he said. "That ends now." The car moved on, disappearing into traffic. And Amina slept, unaware that the street which had watched her be beaten in silence was about to witness a reversal so violent it would leave no doubt who truly held power. The house no longer felt like shelter. It felt like a trap that had learned Amina's breathing pattern. She moved carefully now, every step calculated, every sound measured. Pain had taught her precision. The bruises along her ribs had turned dark, blooming beneath her skin like silent warnings. She dressed in layers despite the heat. Long sleeves pulled low, collars high. Miriam noticed everything, but only when it suited her. That morning, Miriam waited until Amina had finished sweeping the living room floor before speaking. "Your wages," she said flatly, holding out her hand. Amina's chest tightened. "I already gave you most of it." Miriam's eyes hardened. "And? I need the rest for transport," Amina said. "And school?" The slap came without warning. It wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. Amina staggered, her broom clattering to the floor. "You don't need anything," Miriam said calmly. "You owe." Amina lowered her head, her face burning. She reached into her bag with shaking fingers and pulled out the folded notes she had planned to save. Miriam snatched them and counted slowly, deliberately, making sure Amina watched every second. "Good," Miriam said. "Now, remember your place." That word echoed in Amina's head long after Miriam walked away. Place. She had one in this house. On the floor, in the shadows, silent. Later that day, Miriam spoke to a neighbor outside the gate, her voice loud enough to carry. "That girl," Miriam said with a laugh. "Always bringing trouble. Too soft. Too foolish." The neighbor shook her head sympathetically. "Children like that don't last." Amina heard every word from inside. That night, Miriam stood in the doorway of Amina's room. "You think anyone would believe you?" Miriam asked softly. "You think the world cares about girls who feed beggars?" Amina said nothing. Miriam smiled. Exactly. Across the city, the world was already answering that question. In a quiet office high above the noise, files lay open across a wide desk. Property documents, employment records, medical reports, photographs, some taken from far away, some close enough to show detail. The old man stood with his hands behind his back, reading in silence. "She works," the man beside him said. "Pays rent. Still beaten." The old man nodded slowly. "And the stepmother?" "Controls everything. Money, movement, fear." The old man's jaw tightened. "Prepare the chain," he said. "The chain?" the man asked. "Every link she relies on," the old man replied. "Work, credit, reputation." He turned to the window. City lights, reflecting in his eyes. "She taught the girl that kindness is weakness," he said. "Let's see how she survives without cruelty." The next day, Miriam's phone rang while she was at the market. Her smile faded as she listened. "What do you mean review?" she snapped. "My account is fine." A pause. "No, you can't." The call ended. Miriam stared at the phone, then shoved it into her bag, anger simmering beneath the surface. When she returned home, she took it out on Amina. "Did you touch my things?" she demanded. "No," Amina said. Miriam shoved her against the wall. "Don't lie to me." "I didn't," Amina whispered. Miriam raised her hand, then stopped. Something in Amina's eyes had changed. Not defiance. Distance. That night, Amina lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying the old man's words again and again. Kindness is never forgotten. For the first time, she wondered if it could also be dangerous. Elsewhere, a black car pulled into an underground garage beneath a towering building. Security moved quickly, respectfully. Doors opened without words. The old man stepped out, no limp, no weakness, his presence commanding without effort. "Tomorrow," he said to the man beside him, "she learns who she struck." The man nodded. "And the girl?" The old man paused. "Tomorrow," he said again, "she learns she was never small." And back in the house that fed on fear, Miriam slept uneasily, unaware that every system she depended on was already turning against her quietly, legally, relentlessly. Miriam did not plan to follow Amina. She told herself that as she watched the girl dress that morning, careful and quiet, her movements controlled by pain that never fully left her body, Miriam leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, eyes sharp. "Where are you going?" she asked. "A meeting," Amina replied. Miriam laughed. "What kind of meeting?" "I don't know," Amina said honestly. That was what decided it. Miriam grabbed her bag. "I'm coming." The building they arrived at was not a place Miriam had ever imagined entering. Glass rose into the sky like a challenge. Men in suits moved with purpose. Security stood at the doors, calm and immovable. Miriam slowed. "This isn't necessary," she muttered. Amina said nothing. Inside, the air felt expensive, quiet, controlled. A receptionist looked up, her eyes flicking briefly to Miriam before returning to Amina. "You're expected," she said warmly to Amina alone. They were led upstairs, higher, higher still. Miriam's unease grew with every step, but she masked it with arrogance. "People like this are all the same," she whispered, pretending. The doors opened. The room beyond was massive, floor-to-ceiling windows, a long table, men and women seated in silence. When the figure at the far end of the room stood, everyone else followed instantly. Miriam stopped walking, her breath caught. The old crippled man stepped forward. No stick, no limp, no weakness. His back was straight. His presence filled the room without effort. Amina froze. "You," Miriam whispered. The man's eyes moved to her not with anger, not with hatred, with recognition. "You beat her," he said calmly. The words landed like a verdict. Miriam laughed weakly. "This is a joke." The man turned slightly, and a screen behind him lit up. Photographs appeared. Amina on the kitchen floor, bruises on her ribs, marks on her back, time-stamped, documented. Miriam's face drained of color. "For feeding me," the man continued. "You punished her." Security moved closer, not touching, just present. "I don't know who you think you are," Miriam snapped, panic cracking her voice. "But you can't." "I own the bank reviewing your mortgage," the man said. "I own the company that employs your supervisor. I own the building you live in through 3 layers you never bothered to read." Silence crushed the room. Miriam's knees weakened. "You called me useless," the man said. "You called me nothing." He stepped closer. "I built a large empire after I was truly broken," he said. "And yesterday, you touched the only person who reminded me what humanity looked like." And Amina's hands trembled. "I didn't know," Miriam whispered. "That," the man replied, "is the point." He turned away from her. "Remove her," he said. Security took Miriam by the arms as she began to cry, to beg, to break. Amina stood frozen, her entire world splitting open. The man turned back to her, his voice gentle now. "You fed an old crippled man," he said, "and you paid for it with pain." He held out a folder. "Now," he said, "let the world repay you properly." Miriam's screams echoed faintly down the hallway as the doors closed. Power had changed hands. Miriam's fall did not happen all at once. It happened in pieces. Amina learned that later, after the doors closed, after the echoes faded, after she found herself seated alone in a quiet room with a glass of water she had not asked for. Her hands shook as she held it. The world still felt unreal, as if the floor beneath her might disappear the moment she relaxed. The old man? No. The man sat across from her. "My name is Karim," he said gently. "Very few people know it anymore." Amina nodded, unable to speak. "You didn't save me," Karim continued. "You reminded me." He slid documents across the table. Not rushed, not dramatic, final. A place to live. School fees paid in full. Medical care. A future with no conditions attached. "This is not pity," he said. "It is correction." Amina's chest tightened. "What about her?" Karim did not answer immediately. Outside the building, Miriam sat in the back of a security vehicle, her hands clasped so tightly they shook. Her phone buzzed again and again, missed calls, messages, alerts, piling up faster than she could read them. Mortgage review, employment termination, account restrictions, a court summons. Her life was collapsing with terrifying quiet. "No," she whispered. "This isn't fair." Fairness had never concerned her before. By nightfall, Miriam stood alone in the house she once ruled. The lights flickered as the electricity cut out. She stared at the darkness, heart pounding, the silence pressing in from all sides. For the first time, no one was afraid of her. Across the city, Amina slept in a clean room with a locked door and no footsteps pacing outside it. She woke once, startled, then realized no one was coming to hurt her. She cried then, not from pain, but from release. Weeks passed. Miriam's name spread quietly, not loudly, not publicly, but enough. Doors closed, faces turned away. She learned what it felt like to be invisible. To be dismissed. To be called nothing. One afternoon, Amina returned to the bus stop. The bench was the same. The street unchanged. People still passed without looking. She sat down and closed her eyes. She remembered the old man's words. Kindness is never forgotten. A black car slowed briefly across the road, then continued on. Karim did not step out. He did not need to. Some empires are built with steel and money. Others are built the moment someone chooses to care, even when it costs them everything. And somewhere, far from power and punishment, a girl who was beaten for feeding an old crippled man finally understood the truth. The world may punish kindness first, but it always pays it back with interest. End.